The rope burned through Maya Redbird's wrists like liquid fire. But the pain meant nothing compared to the sight of Edgar Pike's Winchester aimed directly at her daughter's chest. 10-year-old Ayanna stood frozen, her dark eyes wide with terror as the rancher's finger tightened on the trigger. "Please." Maya whispered the word torn from her throat. "She's just a child." Pike's smile was winter cold. Old enough to carry her mother's curse. He shifted his aim to 8-year-old Coda, who stood silent as carved stone beside his sister. Both of them are. The memory hit Maya like a physical blow. Standing Bear's final words as the soldier's bullets found their mark. "Our children are the future, Maya. Promise me they'll know they belong in this world." She had failed him then, unable to save her husband from the burning village. She would not fail him now, would not fail him. "You want to kill someone, kill me." Maya said, her voice carrying clear across the frost-slicked precipice of Raven's Bluff. "But leave my children alone." The 40-odd townspeople gathered in the gray dawn light shifted uncomfortably. Sarah Henderson clutched her baby tighter, her face pale with horror at Pike's threat against children. Tom Brennan, the one-armed Civil War veteran, stood at the crowd's edge with his good hand clenched into a fist. Pike's pale eyes glittered with savage satisfaction. "Oh, I intend to kill you, savage. But first you're going to watch your demon spawn pay for the evil you've brought to our town." He raised the rifle again, centering it on Ayanna's small chest. The girl whimpered not from fear for herself, but from the rope cutting into her bound wrists. Maya felt something break inside her, a dam of grief and rage that had held for 2 months since Standing Bear's murder. "You coward!" She snarled, straining against her bonds. "Threatening children because you're too weak to face the truth about yourself." Pike's face darkened. "Truth, I'll show you truth, witch. Your evil has poisoned this town since the day you arrived. First the Henderson baby's fever, then McCready's horse, now cattle vanishing in the night. Death follows your kind like anyone who spills blood here answers to me." The voice cut through Pike's tirade like a blade through flesh. Sheriff Silas Hawke emerged from the pine grove below, his long coat dark with morning dew and his pale eyes harder than winter ice. The star on his chest caught the pale light as his scarred hand moved to rest on his gun butt. Pike's jaw worked furiously. "This ain't your business, Hawke. The town's made its decision. Or has it?" Silas stepped closer, close enough that Pike could see the old knife scar running from his temple to his jaw. Funny how decisions get made while the sheriff's chasing rustlers on the far side of the territory. Almost like someone wanted me gone. Maya felt hope flicker in her chest as she saw doubt creeping into some faces in the crowd. Agnes Finch, the town's boarding house keeper and chief gossip, was wringing her hands with obvious distress. Dr. Morrison looked troubled, his medical bag clutched tight in his weathered hands. "The law's clear on murder, Pike." Silas continued his voice, never rising above conversational tone. "And threatening children ain't the work of civilized men." Pike's rifle wavered slightly, but his finger remained on the trigger. "These ain't children, they're monsters. Just like their mother." That's when Agnes Finch found her voice surprising everyone, including herself. "Edgar Pike, you put that gun down this instant." Her voice shook, but it carried the authority of a woman who had run Pine Ridge's social order for 20 years. "I don't care what you think that woman's done. You don't threaten babies in this town." Other voices joined in Dr. Morrison, protesting the barbarity, Sarah Henderson crying out in maternal horror, even some of Pike's own supporters looking uncomfortable with his targeting of children. But Pike was beyond reason now, consumed by the kind of hatred that fed on itself. "You're all fools. Can't you see how she's corrupted you? How her evil spreads like poison?" He swung the rifle back toward Ayanna, his eyes burning with madness. Maya closed her eyes, unable to watch her daughter die, and whispered a prayer in Comanche to Standing Bear's spirit. The gunshot cracked across the bluff like thunder. Maya's eyes snapped open, expecting to see her daughter's blood staining the frost-covered stone. Instead, she saw Pike staggering backward, his rifle spinning away into the crowd. Sheriff Hawke stood with his smoking Colt still leveled, his face carved from granite. "Next one won't be a warning shot," Silas said quietly. Pike clutched his wounded hand to his chest, his face white with shock and pain. "You shot me. You actually shot me." "Shot your gun hand," Silas corrected. Seemed the quickest way to end this foolishness before someone got killed. The crowd erupted in chaos, some cheering the sheriff's intervention, others shouting about the law being perverted. But Maya barely heard them. She was staring at her children alive and unharmed, and feeling something tight in her chest finally begin to loosen. Tom Brennan pushed through the crowd, his weathered face grim with purpose. Without a word, he began untying the ropes binding Maya and her children, his one good arm working with practiced efficiency. "And this ain't over," Pike snarled, cradling his wounded hand. "You think you've won something, but you've just signed this town's death warrant. When more of her kind comes seeking revenge, the only revenge anyone's seeking," interrupted a new voice, "is yours against a woman who's done you no wrong." Dr. Morrison stepped forward, his medical training evident in how he examined Pike's wound with professional detachment. "Flesh wound, nothing more. Though I suspect your pride's hurt worse than your hand." Pike jerked away from the doctor's touch. "Don't you dare!" "Don't I dare what treat the wounded speak the truth?" Morrison's voice carried the dry sarcasm of a man who had seen too much frontier nonsense. "I've examined every death and illness in this town for the past 3 months, Edgar. Not one of them shows any sign of supernatural interference. Just the normal hardships of frontier life." Maya felt the ropes fall away from her wrists and immediately pulled her children close. Ayanna was trembling like a leaf in a storm, while Coda remained stone-faced despite the tears tracking down his cheeks. "It's over," she whispered to them in Comanche. "We're safe." But even as she spoke the words, Maya knew they weren't entirely true. Pike's hatred hadn't died with his wounded hand, and men like him didn't give up easily. This was a reprieve, not a victory. Sheriff Hawke seemed to read her thoughts. "Come on," he said, holstering his gun. "Let's get you and the children somewhere warm. We've got a lot to figure out." As they walked down the narrow path leading away from Raven's Bluff, Maya caught a glimpse of Agnes Finch approaching Pike with her first aid supplies. The older woman's face was pale but determined. "You're lucky Sheriff Hawke has better sense than you do," Agnes told Pike as she began bandaging his hand. "Threatening children? I'm ashamed to know you, Edgar Pike." Pike's eyes burned with undiminished hatred as he watched Maya and her family disappear down the trail. "This isn't finished," he muttered. "Not by a long shot." Agnes paused in her bandaging, her gray eyes meeting Pike's with surprising steel. "For your sake, Edgar, I hope it is. Because if you threaten those children again, you'll answer to more than just the sheriff." The town of Pine Ridge spread below them like a promise and a threat, its wooden buildings stark against the Colorado landscape. Maya had arrived here 2 months ago with nothing but her children and the clothes on their backs, seeking shelter in an abandoned stable behind Henley's dry goods. She had swept out the old straw, patched the worst holes with mud and grass, and made beds from horse blankets and her own torn skirt. It wasn't much, but it was the first roof they'd had since the soldiers burned their village and murdered Standing Bear. Now, walking beside Sheriff Hawke with her children's hands warm in hers, Maya dared to hope that Pine Ridge might become something more than just another place to hide. The stable felt like a palace after the terror of Raven's Bluff. Maya settled her children on their makeshift beds, checking them over for injuries while they clung to her with desperate relief. "Marika?" Ayanna whispered, her voice small and frightened. "Why do they hate us so much?" Maya smoothed her daughter's black hair, searching for words that wouldn't sound like lies. "Some people need someone to blame for their troubles. It's easier than looking at themselves." Sheriff Hawke appeared in the doorway, his scarred face softened by something that might have been sympathy. "Brought some supplies," he said, setting down a cloth bundle. Food medicine for cuts and bruises coffee if you can find a way to brew it. Maya felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected kindness. Thank you. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Silas's voice was rough with old pain. Had a sister once about your daughter's age. Pretty little thing, always singing. She died while I was away at war. Fever took her when the town doctor wouldn't treat her. He paused, his pale eyes distant with memory. She'd been keeping company with a freed slave, you see. Good man treated her right, but the town didn't approve. When she got sick, they let her die rather than sully themselves by helping her. Maya understood. This man knew what it meant to lose someone to other people's hatred. That didn't make him safe, but it made him human. Silas pulled something from his coat, a small wooden bird, carved with exquisite detail. Its wings were spread as if caught in eternal flight, and its painted eyes seemed to sparkle with life. Whittled it myself, he said, offering it to Ayanna. Figured you might like something pretty to look at. Ayanna's face lit up with the first genuine smile Maya had seen from her in weeks. She cradled the wooden bird like a precious treasure, running her fingers over its smooth feathers. It's beautiful, she breathed. What's its name? Silas smiled, the expression transforming his weathered features. That's for you to decide, little miss. Names are powerful things. After the sheriff left, Maya sat with her children in the gathering dusk. Ayanna played with her wooden bird, while Coda retreated into the protective silence that had become his shield since Standing Bear's death. What are you going to name it? Maya asked her daughter. Ayanna held the bird up to catch the last light. Hope, she said simply. I'm going to call her Hope. Maya felt her heart clench at her daughter's innocent faith. Hope was a dangerous thing in their situation, but perhaps it was also necessary. Without hope, they were just survivors waiting to die. Hope is a good name, she said softly. But remember, little bird Hope must be guarded carefully. There are those who would steal it if they could. As if summoned by her words, rocks began striking the stable wall. Sharp cracks echoed through the darkness, each impact making the children jump. Maya held them close, feeling their small bodies tense with fear. When morning came, they found savages scratched deep into the wooden door. But they also found something else, a small bundle of food left by someone who cared enough to risk Pike's displeasure. Bread, cheese, dried fruit, and precious coffee beans. See, Ayanna said, clutching her wooden bird. Some people do want us here. Maya hugged her daughter close, but her eyes remained watchful. Pike's hatred was like a poison that would spread, if not stopped. And she feared their anonymous benefactor wouldn't be enough to counter the venom he was surely spreading through the town. 3 days later, the stranger arrived. Maya spotted him first from the stable window, a small, neat man in an expensive suit, riding a horse that had seen better days. Everything about him projected harmlessness, from his wire-rimmed spectacles to his apologetic smile. But Maya had learned to read the signs of danger in men's faces, and beneath this stranger's mild exterior lurked something patient and cold as a winter snake. Who is he? Ayanna asked, pressing close to her mother's side. Trouble, Maya replied, watching the man dismount at the hotel. The kind that comes wrapped in silk. Sheriff Hawke confirmed her suspicions when he returned from his evening rounds. Name's Cornelius Whelan. Claims to be a traveling salesman, but his boots are made for riding hard and fast, not walking store to store. Maya felt ice forming in her stomach. Pike's doing, that'd be my guess. Silas checked his gun, a gesture so natural it seemed unconscious. Man like Whelan doesn't just happen to wander into Pine Ridge. He was sent. What does he want? Silas's pale eyes were grim. Nothing good. I'd keep your children close tonight. Maya barely slept, every shadow potentially hiding danger. But morning brought not violence, but something more insidious, a visit from Agnes Finch, her face white with terror. He's asking questions, Agnes whispered, glancing over her shoulder. That Whelan, man, he's been talking to people offering money for information about you and your children. What kind of information? Everything. Where you came from, why you're here, who helps you in town. Agnes wrung her hands desperately. Maya, there's something wrong with him. Something in his eyes when he smiles. Maya's blood chilled as the implications sank in. Whelan wasn't just gathering intelligence, he was mapping their vulnerabilities, identifying their allies and enemies. It was the methodical approach of a professional killer. Has Sheriff Hawke been told? Agnes shook her head miserably. He left before dawn, chasing reports of trouble at the Morrison ranch. Won't be back until tonight. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of isolation settling on her shoulders. Once again, their protector had been drawn away at the crucial moment. Once again, they faced danger alone. What do we do, Mama? Ayanna asked quietly, her wooden bird clutched tight in her small hands. Maya looked at her children, brave, innocent, guilty of no crime, except existing in a world that valued their lives less than other people's comfort. They deserved better than this endless cycle of fear and flight. We make our stand, she said quietly. Here in Pine Ridge with whatever allies we can find. It was a desperate gamble, but running would only delay the inevitable. If Whelan was half as professional as he appeared, he would track them anywhere they went. Better to face him on ground they knew among people who might choose justice over fear. That afternoon, as storm clouds gathered over the Colorado peaks, Maya began to prepare for what could be their final battle. Not for their lives, but for their right to exist in peace. The crisis erupted sooner than expected, triggered by what appeared to be a medical emergency, but was actually something far more sinister. Maya was tending to a minor cut on Coda's hand when Dr. Morrison burst into the stable, his face grim with urgency. Mrs. Redbird, I need your help. There's been an accident at the mine, several men injured, more than I can handle alone. Maya didn't hesitate. She had helped with difficult births and injuries since arriving in Pine Ridge, her knowledge of traditional healing proving invaluable in a town with only one overworked doctor. Children stay here, she told Ayanna and Coda. Don't leave the stable for anyone except Sheriff Hawke or Dr. Morrison. But as they hurried toward the mine, something nagged at Maya's instincts. Dr. Morrison seemed nervous, his usual steady confidence replaced by jerky, uncertain movements. Doctor, she said carefully, how many men were hurt? 5, maybe 6. Cave-in near the main shaft. But his voice lacked conviction, and he wouldn't meet her eyes. Maya's blood turned to ice as understanding struck. There is no accident, is there? Morrison stopped walking, his shoulders sagging with defeat. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so damn sorry. But he has my grandson said he'd kill the boy if I didn't bring you to him. Maya felt the trap closing around her with inexorable precision. Whelan had been mapping not just her routines, but her relationships, identifying who she trusted and how to exploit that trust. Where are my children? Safe as far as I know. This is just about you. Morrison's face was haggard with guilt and fear. He promised no harm would come to them if you cooperated. And you believed him. Maya's voice was sharp with desperate anger. Morrison flinched as if struck. What choice did I have? He has my grandson. Maya understood the terrible arithmetic of survival, one life weighed against another, impossible choices forced by evil men. She couldn't blame Morrison for choosing his grandchild over her, but she couldn't forgive him either. Where is he? The old mine office. He's waiting alone, said this was just business. Maya knew it was almost certainly a lie. But she also knew she had no choice. If Whelan had taken Morrison's grandson, he wouldn't hesitate to target her children next. Her only hope was to face him directly and hope her value as a target would keep her alive long enough to find a way out. The mine office perched on a hillside above town like a buzzard on a fence post. Its windows stared down at Pine Ridge with the empty gaze of abandonment, and Maya felt her skin crawl as they approached. Cornelius Whelan sat behind the office desk as if he owned it. his mild smile firmly in place, despite the obvious menace of the situation. Two other men flanked him, hard-faced strangers, with the dead eyes of professional killers. "Mrs. Redbird," Whelan said pleasantly, "how good of you to join us. Please sit down. We have business to discuss." Maya remained standing, her hand resting on the knife at her belt. "Where is Dr. Morrison's grandson?" "Safe and sound, I assure you. The boy is enjoying some candy and picture books at my associate's camp outside town. He'll be returned to his family once our business is concluded." Whelan gestured to a chair with mock courtesy. "Please, Mrs. Redbird, there's no need for dramatics. This is simply a matter of settling accounts." "What accounts? I owe you nothing." Whelan's smile widened, but his eyes remained cold as winter stars. "Ah, but you do. You see, you were central to Edgar Pike's rather ambitious cattle theft scheme. The scapegoat he intended to blame for his crimes." Maya felt the bottom drop out of her world. "I had nothing to do with Pike's cattle." "Of course not. But my employers don't particularly care about guilt or innocence. They care about getting paid." Whelan leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed despite the deadly nature of the conversation. "Pike owes them a substantial sum money he planned to raise by selling stolen cattle and letting you take the blame, then collect from Pike. Unfortunately, Mr. Pike has proven unreliable. His scheme failed, his reputation is ruined, and his assets are insufficient to cover the debt." Whelan's voice took on a mock sympathetic tone. "Which brings us to you." Maya understood with sickening clarity. "You're going to kill me and claim I was Pike's partner." "Kill you?" Whelan looked genuinely shocked. "My dear woman, what do you take me for? Some common murderer?" He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing with the same pleasant tone. "No, Mrs. Redbird. I'm going to sell you. You and your children to certain mining interests in Mexico who pay very well for reliable workers and ask no inconvenient questions about documentation." The words hit Maya like physical blows. Slavery. He was talking about slavery dressed up in the polite language of business. Dr. Morrison made a strangled sound of horror. "You said you just wanted to talk to her. You said—" "I said many things, Doctor." Whelan interrupted smoothly. "Most of them calculated to ensure your cooperation. The boy will be released unharmed once Mrs. Redbird and her children are safely in transit." Maya felt rage building in her chest like fire in dry kindling. "I'll die before I let you touch my children." "Oh, I don't think you will." Whelan consulted his pocket watch with theatrical precision. "You see, my associates have contingency plans in place. If I don't signal them within the next hour, they have instructions to begin demonstrating their seriousness. Starting with the children at the town school." Maya's world tilted on its axis. Whelan wasn't just threatening her family, he was holding the entire town hostage. That's when the unexpected happened. Dr. Morrison, his face gray with shame and desperation, suddenly lunged forward and grabbed one of the oil lamps from Whelan's desk. "Run, Maya!" he shouted, hurling the lamp against the office wall. "Get out of here." Glass-shattered oil spread, and flames began to lick hungrily at the dry wooden walls. Whelan's composure cracked as his carefully controlled situation dissolved into chaos. "You fool," he snarled, drawing a small but deadly derringer. "You've killed us all." But Maya was already moving her years of survival, honing her reflexes to razor sharpness. She dove behind an overturned desk as Whelan's shot cracked through the smoky air, then rolled toward the window while his men scrambled to control the spreading fire. Glass cut her hands as she crashed through the window, but the pain was nothing compared to the desperate need to reach her children before Whelan's associates could carry out their threat. She hit the ground hard, rolled to absorb the impact, and came up running. Behind her, the mine office was becoming an inferno. She could hear Whelan screaming orders at his men, Dr. Morrison coughing in the smoke, and the hungry crackle of flames consuming dry wood. Pine Ridge spread below her like a map of hope and terror. Somewhere in that collection of wooden buildings, her children waited in the stable, trusting her to keep them safe. And somewhere else, Whelan's men were preparing to murder innocents to force her compliance. Maya ran down the hillside with the speed of desperation, her heart hammering against her ribs and Standing Bear's memory driving her forward. She had failed to save her husband, but she would not fail to save her children. The town was in chaos when Maya reached the main street. Smoke from the burning mine office was visible for miles, and people were running in all directions, some toward the fire to help fight it, others away from what they feared might be an attack. In the confusion, Maya spotted a familiar figure. Tom Brennan, the one-armed veteran standing guard outside the school with his rifle ready. "Tom," she called, running toward him. "Where are my children?" Brennan's weathered face was grim with understanding. "Safe at the sheriff's house. Agnes took them there when the trouble started." He gestured toward the smoke. "That you're doing, Whelan's. He had Dr. Morrison's grandson force the doctor to bring me to him." Maya's words came in gasps as she fought to catch her breath. "He's got men positioned around town threatening to kill children if I don't surrender." Tom's expression darkened. "Professional killers, then. I figured as much when I saw them taking positions this morning." "You saw them. Old cavalry habits." Tom replied grimly. "I always scout potential trouble before it starts. 3 men I didn't recognize, all armed, all watching key points in town." Maya felt a flicker of hope. "Can you stop them?" "Maybe, if I can get close enough." Tom checked his rifle, his movements, those of a man preparing for war. "Question is, what about Whelan himself?" Before Maya could answer, Agnes Finch appeared at her elbow, her face pale but determined. "Maya, thank God you're safe. Your children are frantic with worry." Agnes glanced toward the burning mine office. "Is it true what people are saying? That stranger Whelan tried to kidnap you? Tried to sell me and my children to Mexican slavers?" Maya replied bluntly. "Along with threatening to murder school children if I didn't cooperate." Agnes's face went white as old paper. "Dear God. What kind of monster?" "The kind Edgar Pike brought to our town." Tom interrupted. "The kind that thrives on fear and weakness." That's when they heard the gunshots, 3 quick cracks from the direction of the burning mine office, followed by shouting and the sound of horses moving fast. "Whelan's making his move," Tom said grimly. "Whatever he's planning, it's starting now." Maya felt her heart race as she realized the implications. With the mine office burning and his original plan disrupted, Whelan would be desperate, dangerous, and completely unpredictable. "I need to get to my children," she said. "No." The voice that stopped her was unexpected Sarah Henderson, the young mother who had been one of the first to show Maya kindness. "You need to end this before more innocents get hurt." Sarah stepped closer, her baby clutched in her arms and her face set with grim determination. "He's using our children as weapons against you, Maya. That makes this every parent's fight." Other voices joined in, townspeople emerging from their hiding places, their faces showing various shades of fear and anger. Maya realized that word of Whelan's threats had spread, and Pine Ridge was finally seeing the true nature of the men Edgar Pike had brought among them. "What do you want me to do?" Maya asked. "What you've been doing all along," Agnes replied firmly. "Survive. But this time, let us help you." That's when Sheriff Hawke appeared, riding hard down the main street with his face like carved granite. He reined in his horse and dismounted in one fluid motion, his pale eyes taking in the scene with professional assessment. "You heard the shooting," he said tersely. "Someone want to tell me what's happening in my town?" Maya quickly explained Whelan's plot, Dr. Morrison's forced cooperation, and the threat to the school children. Silas listened without interruption, his expression growing colder with each detail. "Professional job," he said finally. "Question is, how many men is he working with?" "At least 5, maybe more," Tom replied. 3 I spotted this morning, plus Whelan and whoever was with him at the mine office." Silas nodded grimly. Too many for a straight fight. We'll need to be smart about this. But before he could elaborate, a new voice cut through the gathering crowd. Edgar Pike, riding down the street with his wounded hand wrapped in bandages and his face twisted with desperate hatred. "There she is," Pike shouted, pointing directly at Maya. "The witch who brought this curse on our town. Whelan was right. She's the cause of all our troubles." Maya felt the crowd's mood shift as Pike's words worked their familiar poison. Even those who had begun to support her looked uncertain, frightened by the chaos erupting around them. Edgar Pike. Sheriff Hawke said quietly, "You're under arrest for conspiracy and cattle theft." Pike laughed bitterly. "Arrest me while his town burns because of her evil. You're as corrupted as the rest of them, Hawke." That's when Whelan himself appeared, emerging from an alley with his expensive suit torn and soot-stained from the fire. His mild demeanor was completely gone now, replaced by the cold professionalism of a killer whose patience had run out. In his hands, he held a terrified little boy, Dr. Morrison's grandson Tommy, his young face streaked with tears. "Enough!" Whelan called out, his voice carrying clearly across the street. "Mrs. Redbird, you have exactly 1 minute to surrender yourself, or this child dies. After that, my associates will begin working their way through the school." Maya felt the world narrow to a single terrible focus. The boy in Whelan's arms was maybe 6 years old, guilty of nothing except being born into a world where evil men used children as weapons. But even as she stepped forward, prepared to trade her life for Tommy's, she heard Agnes Finch's voice rise clear and strong above the chaos. "Cornelius Whelan, you release that child this instant." The gray-haired boarding house keeper stood in the middle of the street, her heavy purse clutched in both hands like a weapon. Behind her, other townspeople began to emerge from doorways and alleys, not all of them, but enough to matter. "You want to threaten children in our town?" Agnes continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You want to bring slave traders and killers among decent folk. Well, you picked the wrong place to make your stand." Whelan's calculated composure finally cracked completely. "You interfering old witch, I'll kill the boy right here in front of you." But Agnes was no longer alone. Tom Brennan had moved to flank Whelan from the left, his rifle steady despite his missing arm. Dr. Morrison had appeared from another direction, his medical bag abandoned in favor of an old Army Colt. Even Sarah Henderson stood ready, her baby passed to another woman and a shotgun in her hands. "Seems to me," Sheriff Hawke said conversationally, "you're outnumbered, Whelan. Might want to reconsider your options." Whelan's eyes darted desperately around the circle of armed townspeople. His grand scheme was collapsing his professional advantages, neutralized by ordinary people who had finally chosen courage over fear. That's when Edgar Pike made his fatal mistake. Seeing his dreams of revenge slipping away, Pike drew his gun with his wounded but still functional left hand. "If you won't kill the witch, I will—" He fired wildly at Maya, but his injured hand made his aim erratic. The bullet went wide, but its path took it directly through the space where Whelan was holding little Tommy. The boy screamed as the bullet clipped his shoulder, and Whelan instinctively pulled him closer for protection. In that moment of confusion, Agnes Finch proved that courage comes in many forms. The gray-haired widow charged forward with her weighted purse raised high, striking Whelan across the temple with a blow that would have felled a smaller man. The killer staggered, his grip on Tommy loosening, and Tom Brennan's rifle spoke with deadly authority. Whelan spun and fell, his threat to Pine Ridge ended by an elderly woman's courage and a veteran's steady aim. In the sudden silence that followed, Tommy Morrison ran crying to his grandfather's arms, while Pike stared in disbelief at the collapse of his carefully orchestrated revenge. "It's over, Edgar," Sheriff Hawke said quietly, his gun trained on the rancher. "Drop your weapon." Pike looked around at the faces surrounding him, no longer fearful or uncertain, but unified in their rejection of what he represented. His empire of hatred had crumbled, leaving him alone and despised. "You fools," he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. "You have no idea what you've done, what she'll bring down on this town. She's brought us together, Agnes said firmly, her purse still clutched in her trembling hands. Taught us the difference between real threats and imaginary ones. Pike's face crumpled as the last of his delusions shattered. The gun fell from his nerveless fingers, and he sank to his knees in the dusty street. I just wanted them gone, he whispered. Wanted things to go back to the way they were. Maya looked at the broken man who had caused so much pain and felt something unexpected stir in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of weary pity. Pike had let his fear and hatred consume him so completely that he had become the very monster he claimed to be fighting. Things never go back, she said quietly. They only move forward. The choice is whether we move toward something better or something worse. In the days that followed, Pine Ridge began the slow process of healing. Dr. Morrison, consumed by guilt over his forced betrayal, worked tirelessly to treat the wounded and prove his renewed commitment to his oath. Tom Brennan organized the other veterans into a proper town watch, ensuring that no more Whelans could infiltrate their community. Agnes Finch became Maya's fiercest advocate, using her position as the town's communication hub to spread the true story of what had happened. Within a week, territorial authorities arrived to investigate, finding clear evidence of Pike's crimes and Whelan's slave trading operation. But the most significant changes were in the people themselves. Pine Ridge had been tested by hatred and fear, and had chosen courage and compassion. That choice transformed not just individual hearts, but the entire character of the community. For Maya and her children, the transformation was even more profound. No longer refugees hiding in an abandoned stable, they were offered a proper house on the town's main street, small but clean, with glass windows and a wood-burning stove. Ayanna enrolled in the school where her intelligence and gentle nature quickly won over classmates and teachers alike. Coda, gradually emerging from his protective silence, began to speak of becoming a doctor like Dr. Morrison, wanting to heal rather than harm. And Maya herself found purpose beyond mere survival. Her knowledge of traditional healing combined with her experience in crisis situations made her invaluable to the community. When the territorial government offered her a position as a cultural liaison helping to prevent the kind of misunderstandings that had nearly destroyed her family, she accepted gratefully. The wooden bird that Sheriff Hawke had carved for Ayanna became a symbol of their journey from despair to hope. Its smooth feathers, worn by constant handling, seemed to glow in the lamplight as Ayanna held it each night before sleep. "What do you think Hope is dreaming about?" Maya asked her daughter one evening as they sat together on their new front porch. Ayanna considered the question seriously, her young face thoughtful in the gathering dusk. "I think she's dreaming about flying," she said finally. "About soaring so high that she can see the whole world spread out below her, beautiful and peaceful." Maya smiled, pulling her daughter close. "That's a good dream, little bird. A dream worth holding on to." But their greatest test came 1 year later when Edgar Pike, released from territorial prison after serving his sentence, returned to Pine Ridge. Gaunt and broken, he appeared at their door on a cold October morning, his hat in his hands, and his eyes filled with something that might have been remorse. "Mrs. Redbird," he said quietly, his voice hoarse with shame. I came to apologize." Maya stood in her doorway, her children flanking her, and studied the man who had once tried to destroy them. Pike looked older than his years, worn down by guilt and the weight of his own actions. "I don't expect forgiveness." Pike continued his words, coming slowly, as if each one cost him something precious. "I know I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know. I needed to say that I was wrong. About you, about your children, about everything." Maya was quiet for a long moment, feeling the complex emotions stirring in her chest. This broken man had nearly cost them everything, had brought killers and slavers into their peaceful town. By all rights, she should hate him, and should drive him away with the same cruelty he had shown her family. Instead, she stepped aside and gestured toward the kitchen table. "Would you like some coffee, Mr. Pike? You look like you could use something warm." Pike's eyes filled with tears at the unexpected kindness. Yes, thank you." As they sat across from each other at the simple wooden table, Maya studied Pike's face and saw something she had never expected: genuine remorse, the kind that comes from truly understanding the pain you've caused others. "Why did you come back?" she asked gently. Pike stared into his coffee cup as if seeking answers in its dark depths. "Because I couldn't live with myself knowing what I'd done. Because—" He looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. "Because my hate nearly destroyed something beautiful, and I needed to see if there was any way to make amends." "And is there—" Pike's smile was sad and broken. "I don't know. But I had to try." Maya reached across the table and placed her hand over his weathered fingers. "The fact that you're here, that you're asking the question, is a kind of beginning." They talked for nearly an hour, not about forgiveness exactly, but about the choices that had brought them to this moment. Pike spoke of his fears, his failures, the way hatred had eaten at him like a cancer, until there was almost nothing good left inside. Maya shared her own struggles, the nights of terror, the constant vigilance, the weight of protecting her children in a world that seemed determined to destroy them. But she also spoke of hope, of the kindness that had sustained them, of the community that had chosen love over fear. When Pike finally rose to leave, his face was streaked with tears, but somehow lighter than when he had arrived. "I don't deserve your kindness," he said softly. "None of us deserve the kindness we receive," Maya replied. "But we can choose to pass it on, to make the world a little less cruel for those who come after us." Pike nodded, understanding. "What will you tell people about my visit?" Maya smiled, an expression that transformed her face and reminded Pike of the beauty that had once inspired Standing Bear's love. "I'll tell them that Edgar Pike came to apologize and that he meant it. I'll tell them that even broken things can be mended if there's enough love and patience in the world." After Pike left, Maya sat with her children on their front porch, watching the sun set behind the Colorado peaks. Ayanna held her wooden bird up to catch the last light, its carved feathers seeming to glow with inner fire. "My mama," Ayanna said thoughtfully. "Do you think Mr. Pike will be all right?" Maya considered the question, thinking of the broken man who had found the courage to face his victims and seek forgiveness. "I think he has a chance, little bird. Not to go back to what he was, but to become something better." Coda, now 9, and growing into the thoughtful young man he would become, looked up from the book he was reading. "Like us, like all of us," Maya agreed. "We're all broken in some way, all carrying scars from the battles we've fought. But we can choose whether those scars make us bitter or make us wise." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Maya pulled her children close and told them stories of their father, of their grandmother, of the long line of strong people who had survived worse than anything they had faced. "We carry their strength with us," she said, watching Ayanna's wooden bird catch the starlight. "But we also carry something new, the understanding that strength shared is strength multiplied." 6 months later, Maya received a letter that would change their lives once more. The territorial government, impressed by her work as a cultural liaison, was offering her a position in the state capital, a chance to help draft new policies protecting Native peoples from the kind of persecution her family had endured. It was an opportunity beyond her wildest dreams, a chance to transform personal suffering into systemic change. But it would mean leaving Pine Ridge, the town that had become their true home. "What do you think?" she asked her children as they sat around their kitchen table, the letters spread before them like a map to an uncertain future. Ayanna, now 11, and wise beyond her years, fingered her wooden bird thoughtfully. "I think Papa would want us to help other families who are going through what we went through." Coda nodded agreement. "And we'll always have Pine Ridge in our hearts, even if we're not here in person." Maya felt tears blur her vision as she realized how much her children had grown, how the trials they had endured had shaped them into remarkable young people. They understood that home was not a place, but a choice, the choice to carry love and courage wherever life might lead. On their last day in Pine Ridge, the entire town gathered to see them off. Sheriff Hawke presented Maya with his old badge, not as a symbol of authority, but as a reminder that justice was something worth fighting for. Agnes Finch gave each child a carefully wrapped package containing mementos of their time in town. But it was Tom Brennan who provided the most meaningful farewell. The old veteran approached Coda with something wrapped in soft cloth, his weathered face serious with ceremony. "Son," he said formally, "this belonged to your father." Sheriff Hawke asked me to research his military service, and we found out he served with honor in the Indian Scouts. This is his medal for bravery in the line of duty. Coda unwrapped the small bronze star with trembling hands, his eyes wide with wonder and pride. "Papa was a soldier, one of the finest," Tom confirmed. "Saved a lot of lives, both Indian and white." He understood what you and your family are just learning, that courage isn't about fighting, it's about protecting. As their wagon rolled out of Pine Ridge, Maya looked back at the town that had taught them the true meaning of home. The wooden buildings looked small against the vast Colorado landscape, but she knew that what they had built there, the bonds of friendship, the triumph of hope over fear, would endure long after the physical structures had crumbled to dust. Ayanna held her wooden bird up to catch the morning light, its carved wings spread as if ready for flight. "What do you think Hope is thinking about now?" she asked. Maya smiled, watching the horizon unfold before them, like a promise of adventures yet to come. "I think she's thinking about how far she's traveled and how much farther she has yet to go. I think she's dreaming of all the places she'll see, all the people she'll meet, all the good she'll do in the world. And she's not afraid." "Oh, she's afraid," Maya replied, thinking of the challenges that lay ahead, the political battles, the ingrained prejudices, the long struggle to change hearts and minds, one person at a time. But she's learned that being afraid doesn't mean being helpless. It just means being careful, being smart, and never forgetting that you're not flying alone. As Pine Ridge disappeared behind them, Maya felt Standing Bear's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. They had kept their promise to him. Their children did know they belonged in this world. More than that, they were ready to help make it a world where all children could grow up safe and valued. The wooden bird named Hope rode with them toward the horizon, its carved wings catching the light of a new day. And Maya Redbird, no longer a refugee, but a bridge builder and peacemaker, closed her eyes and dreamed of the day when all the broken things in the world might learn to fly again. Behind them, Pine Ridge continued its daily life, forever changed by the family that had shown them the difference between real threats and imaginary ones. And in the governor's office in Denver, officials waited to hear Maya's ideas for protecting other families like hers from the kind of hatred that had nearly destroyed them. The frontier stretched out before them, vast and full of challenges, but Maya was no longer afraid. She had learned the most important lesson the wilderness could teach, that home was not a place you found, but something you carried with you, built from love and courage, and the willingness to see beyond surface differences to the shared humanity beneath. In her heart, she carried Pine Ridge's greatest gift, the knowledge that even in the darkest times, there were those willing to stand against hatred, to choose understanding over fear, and to remember that hope, like a wooden bird, could take wing and soar, no matter how many times it had been broken.